Okay. Hey everybody. This is the first Squid Dev Talk that we've done. And today I'm Ben Hubbard, and I'm a developer here at Squid, and I'm going to talk about Salesforce Communities, and then do a little bit of a dive into how we would use Squid on a Salesforce community. So I'm going to go ahead and log into my dev org. And this is a brand new org I spun up, and the first thing I did when I got this org, I went to customize, and there's this communities link here that says new. Now, some orgs you won't even see this. A lot of older orgs you don't get this option, especially if you've already enabled a customer portal or a partner portal. I think you have to call support and get them to do a bunch of stuff in your org for that to happen. But if you haven't enabled a portal before, or this is a newer org, you'll get this communities button. And typically you'll click on settings, and it will ask you to move to using communities in your org. And this is a non-reversible process. So once you do it in your org, you can never go back. And you have communities in your org. One of the things it does is it gives you this header up here that is a little different than the normal Salesforce header. You can edit go to your setup menu, contact information. So it's basically all the same stuff that was here, but it's now a different layout, and your chatter picture shows up here in the corner. I kind of find it a little. I find vertical space on your screen kind of important. So I don't know how I feel about this header always being there, whether you're internal or not, but it's there. So if we go to communities, we can click Manage Communities, and then there won't be any communities here to start, but you can click on New Community, and you can create a new community. And I called mine Squid Community, and you can go ahead and edit the community here. When you first set up the community, it asks you a couple things like give a URL and a couple other things. But this is the UI for working with your communities. The first big advantage of communities over regular portals is the fact that you don't actually specify individual members to be members of your community. You specify member profiles or member permission sets. So if anyone has the system administrator profile or the customer community user profile, they will be in this community. They'll be a member. And when you save this, any new members that you've added will get emails immediately saying, "Hey, you're part of this community. You can sign in." You can also do it based on permission sets. The next thing is tabs, and this is exactly the same functionality as our old customer portals. So you can say which tabs you want available to your community. Branding lets you pick colors and all this stuff for your community. There's a color scheme that you can pick. So we can do tan or aloha blue if we want, but I'm going to stick with tan for now. Save that. Login page, there's a little bit of customizability for your login page. Change the header and do interesting things here. And then you can edit your email. So this is basically the admin, point-and-click admin area for communities. It's pretty simple. The things that communities add, which I'll go into a little later, is now your portal users have access to chatter. They can post to chatter and be part of groups and all that. and there are a few other advantages that I'll get into in a little bit. But now that we have our community set up, which when I did it, it took me like 5 minutes to get all the settings set up and allow it to be logged in and all that. I'm going to go ahead and keep clicking on the wrong thing. If you click here, it takes you to the community, but if you click edit, so right now it's offline. I'm going to click publish and put it online. Okay. So right now we have our members are people who have the customer community user profile or the system administrator profile. So let's see how we add a new member to our community. So let's look at some of our contacts. Now, how portals work in Salesforce, and the same with communities, is they allow your contacts to become users of your system. So how it's always worked is you first have to have a contact record. No one can log into a portal without having a contact record. So you first have to generate a contact. Then you click on the contact. And when you have a portal enabled, you get this additional button over here that says Manage External User, and you can click Enable Customer User. So now what this is doing is actually creating a user account that's linked to the contact record. And this is where we can talk a little bit about user licenses for communities. There are actually a lot more user licenses in this, but they've all been deprecated or are no longer in. Salesforce will not sell any more of those other license types. But the ones they are still currently selling are authenticated website, customer community login, which is the same thing as customer community, but it's a charge per login type license. Customer portal manager, and a couple. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the authenticated website can use communities. The big difference about authenticated website is it's quite a bit cheaper than the other licenses, but it also, the big feature that it doesn't have is it doesn't have access to sharing settings. So with an authenticated website, it can only see items that have a sharing mode of global, public, or it's the owner of a record. So if you think of when you're designing your apps, or when you think about what license do I need to build the functionality I want, is this portal something where members of the portal or community will never be sharing access to records that other people don't have access to? So they can share records to things that are publicly available, but if you ever want a group of people seeing a certain record, but other groups of people not seeing that record, then authenticated website is not the license type for you. Customer community has all that functionality. A couple things the customer community doesn't have, I believe. Also, read the documentation if you really want to be sure. This is kind of, I just did some cursory read-throughs on the documentation, so I could be wrong on some of these, but I believe they don't have access to some of the standard objects like opportunities and assets and things like that. So, but for now, we're just going to give our new user the customer community license and a profile of customer community user. And let's change your email to something that I'm going to actually get so I can log in. Well, let's do actually. Squidify.com. You can leave all that and go ahead and generate this user. Okay, so Ashley James is now a user, and I should be able to check my email and see that Ashley got invited to the Squid community, and her username is ajames@uog.com, and she can click here, set a new password, and now she's logged into our community. Notice since she's just a community user and not an internal user, she doesn't have any access to other communities or the internal stuff like I did logged into my internal org. But as you can see here, there's not much here in this community. There's just a home screen with my tasks that really don't have anything. It doesn't have anything here. So what we can do is we can go back to our managed communities. Where is it? And click manage communities. Edit, and then go to tabs, and we can add some more tabs. So let's go ahead and add chatter to our community and click save. Close that. Actually, let's log on a different Chrome profile for Ashley so that we don't get things confused. So what we can do is to get the login for this community, we can click at it again. Go ahead and copy this, and go here, paste it. Okay, so it's A James at what is it? uog.com. Okay. So now you notice she has the chatter tab as well.
Well, and one thing that's really interesting too about, because from the other portals, the portal look in general, they've made it look much more like the standard Salesforce.
Yeah.
As opposed to the other really boxy, really ugly.
Yeah.
This is less so.
Yeah, they have improved the look quite a bit. I mean, they've basically made your communities look a lot like what John said, look like standard Salesforce, except you get these a couple more color schemes that you can add. So yeah, now we have chatter. So A James can say chatter test, share, and that's being written to chatter on this community. Okay, so now let's dive into putting Squid into this community because we want to use a lot of the rich functionality that Squid has, and we want to see it here in this community. So we can go back here, and what I did was I installed Squid into this org, and I created a page called Contacts tab, and this is just the default template for a tab page. I have not made any customizations to it, but it looks like this on the internal use. And the other thing I did was I went to setup, and I created a custom Visualforce tab called Contacts tab. And if we edit this, you can see that it pulls in the Visualforce page Squid tab. And let's go view that Visualforce page. There it is. And what this Visualforce page does is call the Squid page component and pull up the Squid Contacts tab. So yes, you have to write a little bit of Visualforce here, but it's pretty simple Visualforce. Calling Squid. So that's and this is one way that you would add a regular Squid page to your internal app. So it basically works the same way. So let's go back to setup. And let's go to customize communities, manage communities. We'll edit this, go to tabs, and now what we can do is add our contacts tab. Okay, so now I'm going to go back here and refresh, and it's not going to work because what color was I on?
Red.
Was on red?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if I refresh here, I can see contacts tab. Now when I click here, it's going to give me probably a big nasty error message. So let's see what happens. And it did. That's because portals don't give you nice error messages, for one, and there are some permissions issues with this user that don't let it access Squid yet. So we're going to have to go fix those. And if you really want to know what the errors are going on, you'd have to go to debug logs and figure it out. But if you just follow some of the procedures in the Squid, there's a Squid tutorial on giving permissions to Squid to people, and it's basically the same for that. So I will go through that real quick. So first thing we have to do is we need to give Allison a Squid license. Ashley?
She'd be very insulted.
All right, so let's pull up Ashley James's record, and let's give her a Squid license. Since I'm using the trial, I get 5. Probably if you're using communities extensively, you may want to talk to our sales guys and get a site license so that everyone already has the Squid license and you don't have to deal with creating or provisioning all this stuff. The next thing you can do is you need to give them a permission set of Squid page viewer. I'll add that. Click save. Now, close that. So now if I go to the contacts tab, I can see all of the, I can see the contacts page that I built in Squid, and I get all of the functionality of Squid inside of a community. Now, one thing to be careful about is your sharing settings, because if you had your old sharing settings for all your internal users and you decided to make a community and you didn't adjust your sharing settings, then they're still the same, and Ashley, this person, now has access to all the contacts in your database. So you need to be careful about thinking about your sharing settings before you set up a community. And a cool new feature coming to Winter 14 is you can have actually 2 different sharing settings for internal and external users, which is, I think, a really big plus for people using portals or communities. The next thing we're going to do is let's say that you have some really picky people at your company and they want to totally customize this look and feel and don't want anything standard here. They just want Squid and custom look and feel. So I actually haven't tested this yet, so this is going to be me trying to do this. Yes, doing this in real time. So let's see how this works. Let's go back to our community. Edit, and let's take off all those other tabs. We'll get rid of the home. Save that.
Oh, you can actually take the home tab off now?
Yeah, I guess so.
That's a new feature. That's awesome.
And I think there's somewhere you do the landing tab, but where did that go? Maybe not. So let's go back to our community. Yeah, I'm trying to think about where that goes. Let's refresh. Okay, so all we have is a contact tab. So let's go ahead and turn the header off in Squid for this contact tab. Show header default.
It's in the Visualforce page, not in Squid. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's an excellent point by John, who definitely saved me just now. So So let's go back to the Visualforce page. That's a good point. If you're using the Squid component and not the other way of using overrides, or using the page action to invoke Squid, you have to do your header stuff inside the Visualforce page. So, oh, where is it? Right here? Yeah, there we go. So let's edit this and do default. Save that.
You don't have the sidebar too, right?
The sidebar won't show up if you don't have the header. So, okay, so now we have just Squid, no header. But now our margins are kind of ugly and stuff like that. So we want to go in and make this pretty. So now this is the point where you need someone who's familiar with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to go ahead and make your page really pretty. So let's just write some quick HTML, JavaScript just so you can see how that works. So we can do that right here on our Visualforce page. And probably if you're doing this right, you'll want to use a template or a Visualforce component to make your code more modular and stuff like that. But we're not going to do that right now. We're just going to wrap this in a div and call it wrapper. And then we can just do an inline script tag. This is not how you should write code, by the way, everyone. But it works for a demo.
You could also edit the NX page style within the inline CSS in Squid.
Oh yeah.
That would just give that a margin.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this for now, but Zach is right. You could do that.
Not to pile on, but you probably want it to be a style tag, not a script tag.
Well, that's not exactly piling on.
It might be more effective.
There actually is right and wrong in that scenario. So we'll do a quick save there, and then go back to here. And as you can see, we put some padding around it. We can put our company's logo up top, and we can do all kinds of things. And we've seen some people do some really, just recently, we've seen people do some awesome stuff restyling Squid and just making it look exactly how they wanted it. But yeah, this is Squid in a customer community without all of the community Salesforce stuff. And we could add, let's just go ahead and add some more features to our page, just to show off a little more.
You can grab the XML from our repository and really beef up that Squid page.
That is true. And I have to do, that sounds like too much work for me right now.
Can you make our viewers sick?
Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit more functionality to this tab. It's not going to be all that useful, but it'll show the power of Squid here. So we can add a tab set down here. And we could add a couple tabs, name them different things. We're assuming here that you're a little bit familiar with how Squid works. So this isn't necessarily a Squid demo. This is using Squid in a community. So let's go back to this page. Fresh. And we have our tab set down at the bottom.
So how does it work with like going to other records? Is that any different in a community where like clicking on on Jane Gray's name? What does that do? Is that the same or?
That's a good question. Let's see what happens. I'm thinking this is probably going to take you to a standard page and bring your header back, or it's going to say you don't have privileges. So you'd have to do a little bit more setup in your community to give them access to certain records and things like that. A lot of times with portals we don't necessarily override the individual objects. We do a little more custom stuff with custom links and send.
Because you're trying to essentially encapsulate the entire experience,
yeah,
as opposed to relying on the underlying defaults.
Yeah, but I have done overrides, and they work if all the permissions are set up right.
But the implication of that is you also override it for the underlying org as well.
Yeah.
Well, but you could use page assignments to just override it for the community's profile,
Yep.
and so then it would only go to one for that profile. It would go to a certain thing.
Yep.
That's one of the ways you can do it.
So can you show an example of what we developed?
Yeah, I can.
With the caveat that it's very, 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 very custom.
Sure. Yeah, here's I'm going to log into a portal that we're working on with one of our customers. As you can see here, this is a custom login page. This is not using communities, by the way. This is using regular customer portals. But from what it looks like, you can do all this custom stuff with communities as well. So this is just a Visualforce page that we wrote. This is not using Squid here. But we just did a lot of CSS and JavaScript. I'm not sure. Just click login. This is a sandbox, the SSL cert's not there. And then this is the first portal page. Now this is using Squid models to pull data from Salesforce. There's no Apex pulling any of this data in. What it's not using is standard Squid components. These are all custom Squid components that were built and custom JavaScript and CSS that was written. But as you can see, with Squid, you really can do whatever you want. Whatever you can do with JavaScript and CSS and HTML, you can do with Squid, and you can use Squid as just your server binding, or you can use it. You can pull in some more standard components too. So like we can search for different things. If we search for that, we can pull in different charities.
You guys do have some places where you're using Squid components, you just restyle them, like the tables in some places.
Yeah, like if we go here.
The search results wasn't that a table.
Yeah, this is actually a Squid tab set on the side. It's been restyled. These are all Squid tables that have been restyled. We actually have a lot more styling work to do here on this table. This is not done. This is another tab set that's been restyled. Yeah, there's a lot of custom functionality. This is running on a Salesforce portal. This is not external. This is all native. You can go ahead and edit profile settings for this person.
It doesn't look like Malcolm.
Yeah, we changed that photo. But so yeah, this is just some of the power of portals and Squid that you can do. You guys have any other questions or anything that you think would be cool to go over with communities?
You know, what's the big difference between a customer community and a partner community?
I don't. I haven't researched that.
I think it's just in the objects you can access.
Yeah, it's probably the same difference as the difference between a customer portal and a partner portal. I think they kind of just upgraded those together. So I mean, I guess to recap, the big advantages to communities over portals. Well, I guess I should say differences. Some of them are, I wouldn't say advantages. The one thing is you get this header that's always there, whether you're in the community or not. So I don't know if Salesforce is going to do more with this later, but I'm pretty sure you're stuck with this header if you enable communities in your org. The advantages to communities is you get chatter, so that was a big request that now we have. You get
remove the home tab.
Yeah, you can remove the home tab. You get more standard Salesforce-looking styling instead of the 1995 portal stuff. The other really big thing is you don't assign people to communities on an individual basis like you do portals. You assign them based on profile or permission set, and so it can make adminning a lot easier.
Actually, the setup looks to be quite a bit more streamlined too. They've thought about you don't have it bounce over to a bunch of different places.
Having all those options in one pop-up shows and hides.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, it is kind of weird that it's like a totally different design paradigm than the rest of Salesforce. So I don't know if they're working on maybe unifying that so that everything looks like this, or if it's just gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seems kind of.
Go to see the login page to see if you can set the default.
Set the default what?
Where you go to.
The default tab that you land on.
Oh, it's probably just the first. We can test that out though. Let's log out and log back in with.
We gotta add another tab.
No, I want to see if it. I want to see if it comes. Yeah. Oh yeah, and if you get